So the astrology of the week 4 January 2021 through 10 January 2021 brings us into a dynamic that will define much of the next 6 weeks, which is this square between Aquarius and Taurus. So it asks us to consider our settled routinized actions and how those may cut against the settled thinking or worldviews. And so this tension defines everything. This is the week it begins, it sets up. Quite dynamic week as well. We have 3 planets changing signs. All right, we made it. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad to be here. You know, it's a crazy time that we're in with this massive change. We're here into 2021 now, and this fresh astrological energy is hit. I just want to remind everybody, you know, Saturn and Jupiter are now in a new sector of all of our charts, and that is a big deal. It's the biggest heavy-hitting planets that we have of the 7 traditional, and they're establishing themselves in a new sector, and that can be discombobulating. It can feel strange and different, and I think it'll take some time to really settle in. So just encourage you to hang in there. The first aspect I want to focus on this week, and there's a lot, this comes on Wednesday, actually. So the first 2 days we have a Virgo moon, which is very nice. We finish that Virgo moon, we get into a Libra moon here on Wednesday. But the aspect I want to talk about is Mars's entry into Taurus. It's the first major event of the week. It happens here in Central Europe on Wednesday, right at the end of the day on Wednesday, about 11:30 here in Central Europe. So this is huge because Mars has spent about 7 months in Aries since June, and Mars will be completing that time in Aries, a full retrograde cycle in its fire sign domicile. So think about that for you. What has Mars done to the Aries part of your chart? Maybe there's something good that Mars has left, or there's new action that's emerged, or that's much clearer now. But this shift here on Wednesday brings us into this Mars in Taurus, Saturn in Aquarius, this real tension that will come. The American presidential inauguration happens under this transit, the 2 malefic planets making a square. Saturn is still ruling the roost. Saturn is in earlier zodiacal order for Mars, and so that strict lockdown feature that Saturn can bring, that isolating, cool, cold, separating energy, that is the dominating theme. And Mars, our fiery acting planet, now loses this dignity that it had in Aries and has to now filter through the Venusian, Taurian earth energy. That's a tough place for Mars to be. It's the kind of energy where we might have laziness, we might be subdued by pleasure or by comfort or a desire for comfort, and that sense of wanting to break out into action, separate from the inertia that pleasure can give, that sense is really turned way down. And so this can be the lazy transit. This is the transit where we don't act. It's a refusal to act. It's a inability to act, a blocked feeling, a stagnant feeling. We get comfortable in our rut, the rut transit, because we act, and then that becomes something that keeps us confined, really. And with Saturn overcoming from Aquarius, it is a confinement feeling that kind of doubles up here. And that's the other thing. As soon as Mars enters Taurus, immediately it's applying to a square with Saturn within 3 degrees, which us astrologers and traditional astrologers, it's a special type of aspect when it's within a 3-degree orb. This very intense applying Mars-Saturn square immediately here beginning on Wednesday, and that's a energy that is not easy to deal with. Remember, the Mars-Saturn square story defined much of the last half of the year in 2020. That ended upon Saturn's ingress into Aquarius in mid-December, but now that rejuvenates at an even higher pitch and an even greater level with a much weaker Mars. And I'm thinking that we'll see returns of those themes. You remember last year when we have craziness going on in the world, we have a lot of upheaval, a lot of difficult times all over the globe. Without going into the specifics of that, I think that this could reignite some of that trouble and really bring us into some of the bigger crises that we may have to be facing in the first little bit of this year. Winter, respiratory illness season. So these themes, I think, are in play as being very dramatic and dynamic. Now that square perfects next week, so we don't have the perfection, but the whole rest of this week, it's an applying Mars-Saturn square with Saturn overcoming from Aquarius. You know, when you have 2 planets in dignity, there's multiple theories. I like to think about that being a way to soften and mitigate the negative impact and even produce good qualities. But now we lose that. We don't have Mars in Aries, we have Mars in Taurus. This Mars has to then be blocked, be stagnant, inhibited. This idea of a bull, you see these bull, I used to drive around these bulls. I'm from Texas, we would drive around in the country, you see these grazing bull and these cows, these bulls and cows. They're very subdued, but you anger a bull, it goes nuts. And that's part of the risk here with the Mars in Taurus is that it can't process the anger. Running from confrontation, it's a big problem when our Mars energy can be blocked or is not operating and functioning properly, is that we avoid conflict, we avoid anger, we don't give that Mars its space to breathe. Confronting people is not easy, it's uncomfortable, and there's a choice. Do I choose the comfort and the stasis of the rut, or do I use the Mars and confront? And maybe there's short-term discomfort, but it's a long-term rearrangement. You may be faced with your own personal version of that. Confront now, get the hard stuff out of the way, or maintain in a difficult relational flow. So just consider that as Mars is in Taurus. Remember, Mars will leave Taurus in early March, so we have all of February to think about and process our confrontation abilities within a relationship. Healthy confrontation. It's the way that relationships can be rearranged to meet the needs of both partners when you have regular and healthy confrontation of the other. Because it's a loving act, ultimately. It can be a loving act. I love you, so can I tell you what my needs are? I love you, so can I tell you when I was triggered earlier, and we can process that as a team and then reach a new equilibrium. If we don't have that regular confronting and new equilibrium process, what happens is it builds, and resentment builds under the surface. That Mars has no outlet, it builds and builds and builds, and then it explodes out. Sometimes it can explode out and backwards or sideways, and that root issue is never addressed because the Mars was afraid of confronting and afraid of that discomfort. Within the same hour after Mars enters Taurus, the moon in Libra, the moon will be in Libra here in the later degrees, but freed up now from that sign-based opposition to Mars. This is a lovely, lovely sweet spot. It's my transit of the week energy. First cardinal moon since June, free from a hard aspect to Saturn, free from a hard aspect to Mars, no nodal hard aspect. This is now the beginning of the sweet, lovely cardinal energy for a lot of the months in 2021. The moon is right here with Spica, the fixed star Spica, and the auspicious fixed star Arcturus. These are some of the two best fixed stars in the sky. One of the most auspicious areas of the zodiac, here with the moon now applying to these stars, just as Mars frees up from that sign-based opposition. This is how I call it surfing the transits. We surf for beautiful energy, and then we notice when it potentially could be difficult to give us a heads up. So surf this on Wednesday. The other theme on this now with moon in Libra, consolidating relationships. You might have experienced in 2020 a big upheaval in your personal life and how you're relating to people. Obviously how, because we're not doing it in person as much. Who then you're relating to. I know for me, my family was much closer to me in 2020, more regular contact. As the world blows up, I go back to those people that know me and that I have a long-standing relationship with. How we're communicating, you might want to think about consolidating those energies into 2021. Libra, the relational sign, the air sign of communication, relational air, is free to operate. And I'm thinking about, what are the new rules for how people can access me? Am I available to give, more direct and open kind of lines of communication? All of this stuff is in play now, but this lunar transit, the moon in Libra, right here on Wednesday, finally free from Saturn and Mars in the nodes. You might want to do some work here. Maybe, open your DMs, close your DMs, rearrange how you do emails, or any number of ways you can work with that energy. I see a lot of people already saying, I'm off social media now, or I'm going to de-emphasize my social media availability. And yeah, they should be. It's an addictive drug designed to attack our endorphin system and get us addicted to the screens. I think we're all, one way or the other, struggling or maneuvering or managing that part of our reality, of the social media part of our reality. Thursday at about 11 in the morning, the moon has finished its transits through Libra, but hits Scorpio, those early degrees of Scorpio. And remember, Scorpio, fixed water, the sign of the moon's fall. Difficult energy for the moon. Now will square Aquarius, and where Saturn is, and oppose Mars and Taurus. Really getting hammered here. This is a really dangerous moon, a really rough energy. And so I just want you to be aware of how difficult this energy is. Thursday morning here, Central Europe. If things are triggering, if things are crazy, if things feel really tough, just know this moon is one of the worst moons for as a general delineation. It really, anytime the moon is under pressure, it can really impact the emotions. We're very sensitive to the moon. And this is a big theme for 2021. These Scorpio moons receiving a square from Saturn and Aquarius, and then depending on where Mars is, maybe pinched in there between Mars as well. You can just think about it this way. The moon, it loves the comfort, it's the home. Mars is deep wounding here, especially here in Scorpio. Scorpio, that fixed wounds that come with the emotion. Saturn is leaving us with a coldness. It's a very cold planet. Saturn is the planet of grief and sadness. And so we're just left with wounds and then a cold response to our suffering. But always the deep well of spirit that we all have hopefully can win the day if you're feeling at your worst. Sometimes the worst that we feel is when we can kind of open up spiritually and cry out to these other powers, and they can come to our aid. On Friday here in Central Europe, now we're starting to get into the weekend, but we have Mercury coming into Aquarius about noon, 1 p.m. here in Central Europe, and it's a sign, Aquarius, where Mercury will spend an inordinate amount of time, because Mercury will have a full retrograde cycle in the fixed air sign. You have things about ideas, old ideas, right? Saturn is old. Even traditional ideas and ideas that we've inherited from family or culture that are fixed and that are heavy and weighed down upon us. This is the kind of topic that can be brought into play with Mercury's entry here into Aquarius. So what ideas, as the world is changing dynamically, as the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction has just happened and the new age of air we are now fully into, especially with this full retrograde cycle that Mercury will experience here, this kind of reconsideration of tradition is a big theme in this first little bit of the year. And maybe it jives with some of the policy decisions or the new crisis or crises that are confronting the world with technology and integration. It's all novel in a certain way. And how can we go into the novel configurations technologically with bringing in the ideas that are worth keeping and letting go of the ideas that aren't, as a collective? And on a personal note, you just think about it in the same way. I mean, what did you get from your parents? What do you want to let go of? What books haven't you read that you maybe should? And books are kind of the old world, aren't they? The infinite scroll of short, depleted language in a way. Often there's no complete sentences. Complete sentences of prose that's been deliberately constructed to have beauty and intention. That's kind of the old model. That's what I'm doing, actually. I've actually been reading a lot more. I've been reading books by craftsmen of language. And so that's how I'm doing it, looking back, finding old texts, thinking about what I want to retain into this new age. And also remember, language is one of the things we get right away as kids. I don't even remember learning English. It was given to me by my parents and my culture. And it's fixed. My accent is pretty much fixed. So considering that part of communication and language and how deeply embedded it is, I think is really important as Mercury enters Aquarius and retrogrades back over. Maybe we want to reconsider some of that deeply unquestioned and sort of reactive phraseology. How can we reorient? And I like going back to older books. I've learned a lot just from reading books in my life, and even language, old words that I was never taught. And also ideas about government. Aquarius is the government. It's Saturn, and it's the new rules. It's the day sex sign that Saturn rules, and we're really in an age right now of government as a big theme and government policy. We're going to have a change here, right? A new government in America. I think that this transit with Mercury can be part of how they're going to communicate, how we're going to adjust to a new administration and their discourse and their language and their priorities. And this is kind of a global thing because America still has position and everybody looks at the American news. I've been so surprised. I've been traveling all over and everybody knows about the presidential election. They were all following it. There's the inauguration scheduled for the 20th of January. Then you have this pile up in that new moon. It's actually the first new moon after the inauguration. So in a sense, it's the birth in a way. It's some kind of birth because new moons are considered a birth, but that pile up happens then. So I really think we're going to have a massive shift in maybe the government. And it makes sense because the old administration was so wild and crazy. So those are some thoughts here on Mercury and Aquarius. So then on Friday, on the same day, a little later, about several hours later, 4:30 or so p.m. here in Central Europe, we have Venus coming to Capricorn. This, I think, will be a huge relief. This Venus South Node transit that we talked about a little bit in the last couple of videos, this was really intense, way more intense than I think I gave it credit for. The South Node really can drain Venus, and Venus is something we all need: love, relationships, connection, pleasure. It's what makes life worth living. Venus now gets this big upgrade because in Capricorn, Venus is a day triplicity ruler. So in the daytime, we can really feel Venus much stronger. It's the earth sign, which is the night sect, that nighttime luxuriation that can come with the earth signs. So the other thing, Venus is going to be with Mars. The exaltation ruler of Capricorn, Mars, will be in a Venus-ruled sign, Taurus. So there's this kind of mutual reception. If we want to use exaltation rulership and domicile rulership together, Mars and Venus can sort of flow here. I just think about this, honestly, I was thinking about this as the soulmate transit. It's kind of strange, but Saturn is the ancient things that have been around for a long time, and Venus coming into Capricorn, it's almost like, what are the ancient or old relationships that we've had or that we've retained into this lifetime even? Sometimes you meet someone and it's just like old hat, just very, very comfortable in a flow. That's the kind of energy I think about Venus in Capricorn being. And Saturn's strong in Aquarius, so that's nice. The ruler is doing well. A relief for any Venus-ruled people, Libra risings, Taurus risings, people that are in Venus-ruled years. I think you really feel a palpable shift here that's an upgrade. This can be about the elders, again, people that we look up to that have come before us, maybe calling your parents or grandparents. But also with Venus being here, it's traversing the same part of the zodiac, Capricorn, that the intensity of 2020 climaxed in there in Capricorn. And having Venus here now, I think this is a great time to do art, to think about pleasure and beauty that was birthed out of the difficulty of 2020. You survived, you're here, congratulations. But sometimes to heal, we really need to start creating and getting into other parts of the brain as a way to honor what we've gone through in 2020. So maybe this is from free writing or some sketching or drawing. This transit's like a cleanup transit because all the heavy hitters have moved out of the cardinal signs. Now Venus comes in to sort of heal and kiss the boo-boo. I think I tweeted about kissing the boo-boo with this Venus transit into Capricorn. So just think about, what can you heal, what can you honor, what can you create as a kind of monument or a relic of 2020 that you can, just for remembrance, really. That's what we do, right? We have tombstones for people that have passed on. That's a way to create some Venus around a loss. So think about maybe needing to do that or wanting to process your grief in a creative way during Venus's time here in Capricorn. Early morning on Saturday here, about 4 a.m. in Central Europe, Mars will receive a square from Mercury. So it's this first Mars-Mercury square. It's the first of many squares Mars will receive while it is in Taurus from the planets that are transiting there in Aquarius. This might be, again, a shock, but there could be some shocks and upheavals here with Mercury, maybe related to technology, stocks, the stock market, something like this. The first degrees of Aquarius are Mercury's Egyptian term, and Mercury rules the air signs by night triplicity. What happens is after Mercury completes this square, Mercury is actually applying then to a conjunction to Saturn, which happens later this week. So Saturday and into Sunday, Mercury is really under pressure. We might see disagreements about tradition. They often fight. Astrologers love to fight about the old texts and which techniques are good or bad. So I think we'll see some of that coming into the weekend. But again, it could be economic with Mercury being the planet of trade and business and money. It's just another rough transit. Another planet. We had the moon earlier in the week in Scorpio, smashed between the malefics, and now we get Mercury here this weekend, smashed up in between these malefics. The only other thing I would say is that watch out how we communicate about ourselves and to ourselves, because thought forms, the stream of thinking that's happening at all times, and the visions of the past and future, that's all Mercury. So we all have a Mercury that we're working with all the time. Watch here on the weekend. Be careful to not dip into self-flagellation or negative self-talk. Try to interrupt that is my suggestion. If you find the thinking is producing emotional discomfort, remember this is fixed air. This is Aquarius, old, deep-rooted ways of thinking. And I think those will come up. The old tapes might start playing here while Mercury is under so much pressure. Just know you maybe unplug the tape player for a second if you can. Take a bath, get into the body, stretch, walk, anything to get outside and relief from the tapes as they're playing. Affirmations are wonderful for that. Mars and Taurus being really subdued by that luxuriation of Venus ruling Taurus, but then Venus is now in Capricorn, so there's that flow of the mutual reception. Mercury coming here to square Mars, maybe we try to overthink pleasure. We might try to overthink or judge ourselves for not acting, for just resting, like the Mars and Taurus offers us. Sometimes the best work that we can do is just to lay there. That actually is productive work. These geniuses say the thoughts come in the shower. We don't always have to put this pressure to act. We can let ourselves just act through non-action in a way. It's a paradox. But with this Mercury square, it's like we might be punishing ourselves for wanting to get into the Mars and Taurus energy. Give yourself permission this weekend to do nothing. Later on Saturday, this is 4:30, Venus now overcomes Mars from Capricorn. I think it softens Mars' difficulties here. I think whatever we had early in the morning with Mercury, hopefully by the afternoon here, we can settle into this Venusian overcoming trine. The ruler of Mars, Venus, will overcome it by a trine. This is a really softening. Let love in. We have passions, we have energies. this idea of Mars and wanting to do things, transmuting that and just saying, all right, I see you desire to move and I'm going to let you go, and then let the love in. This is a kind of a passive energy. There's a passivity here, and there's a real opportunity in passivity to just relax and let the love act upon us, you know. And I think with Mars and Taurus here, it's really calling us to do that. You know, let it emerge, give it room to grow without needing to react to it. So much of our lives are like a reaction. What if we just become taciturn and just let the experiences of pleasure that are everywhere at all times, even just like sitting here right now, I was just drinking, see if I got a little bit left here. This black tea, it's so delicious. And just tasting that and feeling that. You know, how often do I give myself time to really say, all right, I'm just gonna feel that pleasure and enjoy it, you know, without having to get up and make another cup or get moving, you know. So, and then the other thing, remember, Capricorn is Saturn, it's structure, it's older structures. And so I think with Venus here in Capricorn, it's like a structured, supported love where we can really let that love rest. And Capricorn has Mars exalted there. And so it's the way that we can move within these deliberate structures. And it doesn't have to be so fast. It doesn't have to be so volatile or so reactive. It can be sustained release, the regular contact that you make with people. You know, who are you obligated to talk with once a week? This is the kind of benefit that can come from a longevity in a relationship with that regular, repeated, committed action upon it. And we have it really activated here with this Mars Venus trine, perfecting, and then this exchange by sign. You know, slow and steady we can approach others. You hear these love stories where the guy just calls her once a week and says, I'm interested in you, and she's not interested, she's not interested, she's not interested, and then boom, she's interested. But it's that deliberate invitation, born from a place of love, from healthy desire, and then that steady invitation can sometimes win the day. So this theme of pacing, it's the slower passivity, the pacing with that passive energetic. It's how you can actually use coming off a notch, stepping down the tone, but then with consistent regularity, you can actually work it in your advantage. So it's kind of a Jedi trick here a little bit. It's contra to what Mars really likes, which is why it can be sort of a challenge. But we're here in it, and so use it. Use this earth energy. Sunday, 4 in the morning, 24-hour period of a really difficult Mercury, but this is the only time Mercury meets Saturn and perfects a conjunction to it during its whole retrograde. I'm thinking again about just the health technologies that are being rolled out and how that rollout, maybe there's something that happens here with more policy that comes into effect. You know, we also might have the RX period as a time later to review some of that, with Saturn giving the support structures of the government and a chance to maybe redo. Again, I go with health technology because that's what Mercury is. It's health and technology, with Saturn as authority and structure and government, especially in that air sign. Talked a lot about this already, this Saturn, Mercury energy, elders, old books, rethinking language, getting into the tradition of who made you, reconsidering old ideas. You know, this is all in play with this conjunction, and it's quite auspicious. Mercury in its term, Saturn in its domicile, both triplicity rulers of Aquarius, the only time that they'll meet this cycle in Aquarius. The best, actually, of the Aquarian energy in a lot of ways. This might be a real peak of the Aquarian energy with the two rulers mixing, and of course the new moon where all the planets are there as well. I wouldn't sleep on old books, old ideas, old thoughts, old language, maybe even reading some of your old writing. You know, even reading aloud, I think that can be useful. Maybe you can find libraries online. I know we're all digitized now, and it might not be safe to go into physical environments, but there's all kinds of older libraries on the internet with images. I just saw a post this week online. Some astrologers were discussing an old horoscope from a museum in the Middle East. It was an Iranian horoscope, I believe. And that was just beautiful to see, and we were having a whole discussion about it. So let's read the cards. You know, it's always cool to see what the cards say, especially in a time when we get so much of a shift astrologically. And it's cool because like last week was a little bit quiet, but we had the huge shift the week before, and then this is another big week of a real changing of energy and a lot happening. It's often how it works, breaks, intensity, but when we have a week that's more intense, I do like to see what the cards say, what the message of the cards is. Sometimes it can be more important in a tarot reading when you have a gravity, when you have a serious question, oh, what's gonna happen, you know, and you really bring that to a divination. Even in horary, they say you have to have a question that you're really intensely concerned about. So let's see what the cards say. Here's our first card. first card is, let's pull it up. Okay. Five of Diamonds. First card is the Five of Diamonds. That's not the easiest of cards. And that is the first decan of Taurus. That's where all the Mars action happens this week, with Mars aspecting Venus, Mars aspecting Mercury. So this is telling us that don't sleep on this Mars shift. I'm not going to be sleeping on it. I know I'm not. It's the third and final pass as well. Mars is applying to that Saturn square, the third and final Mars-Saturn square this round. And in a way, this is that continuation of 2020, that difficult Mars-Saturn energetic. We get that, it's a different close for the two planets, different signs, Aquarius, Taurus now, but it's a completion of their dance. And I think this could be difficult. I think we might see news stories about the crisis we're in, the respiratory illness season, the government response. All that stuff's in play for having a reactive and kind of a being kicked up. Fives in Tarot and Cardomancy are not easy energy. Some of the most difficult energy in the PIP layout is the 5. It's that odd number. There's no elegant division of 12 with 5. You know, it can be a destabilizing force. It's a Mercury ruled decan in Taurus. And I'm thinking that this has to do with the Mars-Mercury square then that we get this week. And just how the ideas that we're experiencing are, you know, if you have Mercury trying to make a relationship, trying to communicate with Mars, and then Mars is distracted maybe with pleasures, Mercury is intensely engaged with its, you know, fixed air sign, that tension that can come with really not wanting to engage in the thoughtful air energy and being more diluted by pleasure, or subdued is the word I really like for Mars and Taurus. Maybe that tension is how Mercury gets mixed up in that and can't really operate either if we're not physically engaged in movement to kind of give the mind a body from which it can think. And I was mentioning earlier about some kind of electronics or hiccups related to technology. Maybe this is going to be something like that. I know that what website Cash App they were saying went down. One of the cash web apps that people use to send money went down this week. All right, let's get the second card. Oh, so anyhow, it's intense. It's been really, really, really intense. The sweet spot doesn't come really until after the Aquarian pile up. That's when this energy for 2021 really starts getting good. Venus will be in Pisces and exalted. Jupiter comes into Pisces. There's just a lot of better astrology after this winter. I think we're kind of descending into the thick of it in a certain way. All right, the second card. Okay, we get Lependu again. I pulled this for one of my last videos. This is that suspension. Again, it's the suspension. And this is a fixed energy. I mean, it's a water, it corresponds to the element water, but when you're suspended, you're fixed. You're not moving, you're hanging. And we get the fixed sign square now as this defining feature of the next 6 weeks, Mars and Saturn, Taurus and Aquarius. And so that's what I'm going to go with this card. I feel like it's telling us that the future right now is a fixed future that is still a birth pang, and it's still an isolation and kind of an entrapment. So this could be something like the lockdowns that we're experiencing globally. Those may be increasing as we get into the height of respiratory illness season. And so maybe we're all just in a state of abeyance, in a state of being held and still in that gestation for this year of 2021, which I think will really start firing on more cylinders and really come into its own March, April, and then particularly May when Jupiter hits Pisces, and for those summer months when I think we can really expand out in a more enjoyable and sort of regal, pleasurable way. So all right, so that's the tarot reading. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for being here. It's an honor to do this always. And you can book astrology readings with me, tarot readings, at my website, sjanderson144.com. Click here to schedule a reading right at the top. I look forward to reading for you. It's always an honor and a privilege. And enjoy this week, especially as we settle into the new dynamics. Just get excited. I always try to stay excited for new change because my life's going to get new and different. And why not be excited? Why not open myself to nice shifts and nice change and nice energy? And even if it's discomfort, it's a lesson that I'll have to learn so I can handle it better next time. All right, enjoy your week. Talk soon.